Welcome to another video on how to answer the longer answer questions for AQA C2. So remember, don't be afraid of them. And the reason not to be afraid of them is because the examiners, like myself, have a specific mark scheme that we have to follow. So if you can learn the general rules of how to answer these questions, you'll do well in your real exams. And it's easy to pick up 4 marks with only a few words. The reason for this is every single student, whether they do higher or foundation, will answer this 6-mark question because it's either at the end of foundation or at the start of higher, which means that to get 6 marks, you're only really a C plus low B grade candidate. So let's have a look at this question then. So in this question, you will be assessed on using good English, organising information clearly, and using specialist terms where appropriate. You don't really need to worry about the English. As long as you are using scientific terms, you don't need to write a big long essay. In fact, a few bullet points will get you the marks. Then let's have a look at the information that we can see. So the student investigated how the rate of reaction. So as soon as you see language like that, as soon as you see language like that, then we are thinking, right, rate of reaction. So we're doing about this section. Okay, change when the concentration, again, very important word, the concentration of the hydrochloric acid was changed. So they've given you a lot of information already in this question. Here you can see a diagram to show the magnesium and the hydrochloric acid. And again, this diagram, especially with the bubbles, gives you a clue as to the types of things you need to do. It says in your plan you should describe how you carry out the investigation. So you don't need to say why you're doing certain things, you're just needing to state what's happening. That's why we've got describe here. Okay, and make it a fair test. So fair test. Describe the measurements you would make. So again, we've got describe, we don't need to say why, but what measurements are you going to make? Now remember, in any experiment, you're going to have to make 2 measurements. And think about rate of reaction, what the word rate of reaction means. So effectively, to get the 6 marks, what you need to do is you need to break the question down into 3 bits. What are the steps for the experiment? Giving a nice step-by-step guide, including what you'd measure. And I've just given you a little bit of a hint here. Think dependent variables and independent variable. What are you going to measure? What are you going to change as well? Alright, and then finally, how are you going to make it a fair test? So really here, we're talking about control variables. Have a go at pausing the video, answering the question, and then if you press play again, you'll have the opportunity to see what or how many marks you'll have got. Right, welcome back. So let's have a go at answering this question. So we move up here. What are the steps of the experiment? So as you saw in the diagram, all you need to do is start by saying we need to add some magnesium to hydrochloric acid. I'm just going to write HCl. So that is effectively the main step. You could possibly start talking about concentration of acid here, but we won't. So what we're going to do is we're going to add magnesium to the hydrochloric acid. And in terms of what you're measuring, now we need to think, right, well, what we're measuring, the dependent variable. What is going to be happening when magnesium reacts with hydrochloric acid? And the key thing is we're going to be talking about gas. So there's 2 things we could do here. We could either count the bubbles, so count the bubbles in a certain period of time, and remember, time is important because time links to rate. Or we could collect the gas over a certain period of time. Now hopefully you've done this experiment with your science teachers, so you should be familiar with things like gas syringes, which definitely would get you some good marks. Now already, by doing this, you're going to get 3 or 4 marks. It's unbelievable, isn't it? But actually that's all you need to do to get the marks. Now also what we need to do, that's our dependent variable thought about, but now we've got to think about the independent variable. So what all we need to say is change the amount of HCl or the concentration. Now, I always think it's good to give examples. So if you say, for example, of concentration, use 1 mole, 2 mole, etc. That shows the examiner that you're really understanding that you've got to change the concentration. Because remember, that's what it asked in the experiment to see how concentration affected the rate of reaction. Then, how will you make it a fair test? So these are your control variables. And what you need to think is, what factors affect rate of reaction? We're changing concentration, but therefore there's different things that could affect it, such as the amount of magnesium. So we can keep that the same. We can always use strips of magnesium, because that's to do with surface area. Obviously powdered magnesium would react much faster. And then we can also talk about, if we've talked about the amount of hydrochloric acid, here we then keep the concentration same and vice versa. But all that information there will get you 6 marks. Not much to do, but I think easy marks. So don't be afraid of what you see. There's a lot of information there, but just break it down into small little chunks and hopefully that will help.